It's a story as old as time, the powerful urge to believe in the unbelievable. But what happens when that belief is built on a foundation of lies? From petrified giants to moon-dwelling bat people, history is littered with hoaxes so audacious, so brilliantly executed. They didn't just fool a few people, they fooled the world. These are the stories of the greatest scams ever pulled, and the masterminds who proved that sometimes the most convincing lie is the one people want to believe. In 1869, workers digging a well in Cardiff, New York, made a startling discovery. It was the body of a man, 10 feet tall, turned to solid stone. The Cardiff giant became an overnight sensation. Thousands flocked to see the petrified remains of a biblical giant, paying 50 cents a pop. Experts from prestigious universities debated its origins. Was it an ancient statue? A petrified man? The answer was far simpler. It was a block of gypsum, secretly carved by a tobacconist named George Hull to win an argument with a preacher about giants in the Bible. By the time the truth came out, Hull had sold his giant for a fortune. Even the great showman P.T. Barnum, when he couldn't buy the original, simply made his own fake, proving that if you can't buy the scam, just scam the scammers. Just a few years later, in 1872, another get-rich-quick scheme captured America's imagination. Two prospectors, Philip Arnold and John Slack, walked into the Bank of California with a bag full of uncut diamonds, claiming they'd found a secret, inexhaustible diamond field out west. Titans of industry, from the founder of the Bank of California to Horace Greeley, scrambled to invest, forming a new mining company worth millions. Their top mining engineer confirmed the find, reporting the ground was littered with gems. There was just one problem. Arnold and Slack had bought thousands of dollars worth of cheap, industrial-grade diamonds and salted the land themselves. It was a classic salted mine fraud on a national scale, and by the time it was exposed, the con men were long gone, leaving some of America's richest men holding a bag of worthless rocks. Sometimes a hoax doesn't just target wallets, it targets the very core of our understanding of who we are. In 1912, amateur archaeologist Charles Dawson announced a monumental discovery in a gravel pit in Piltdown, England. He'd found the fossilized remains of an early human, a missing link between ape and man. For over 40 years, Piltdown Man was celebrated as proof of human evolution, displayed in museums and taught in textbooks. But nagging questions remained. In 1953, new dating technology revealed the truth. The skull was human, but only a few hundred years old. The jawbone belonged to a modern orangutan. The teeth had been filed down and the bones stained to look ancient. It was a deliberate, meticulous fraud that had fooled the world's leading scientists for 4 decades. A stark reminder of how easily scientific desire can blind itself to deception. Deception can also be a weapon of power. For centuries, the papacy in Rome based its vast temporal power on a single document: the donation of Constantine. This decree, supposedly written by the Roman Emperor Constantine in the 4th century, granted the Pope dominion over Rome and the entire Western Roman Empire. It was the legal foundation for the Church's massive landholdings and political authority throughout the Middle Ages. But in the 15th century, a scholar named Lorenzo Valla proved it was a complete forgery. The Latin used in the document was from the 8th century, not the 4th. The entire basis for 1,000 years of papal claims was built on a lie, a masterclass in faking it until you make an empire. Not all deception is malicious. During World War II, the Allies deployed a top-secret unit that fought with an unusual arsenal: sound effects, fake radio transmissions, and an army of inflatable rubber tanks. Officially the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, they were better known as the Ghost Army. Their mission was to impersonate other, much larger Allied units to deceive the Germans about the size and location of their forces. They staged fake buildups, drawing enemy divisions away from real targets, most famously in the run-up to D-Day. They were artists and engineers turned soldiers of deception, and their phantom army is credited with saving thousands of lives by turning the battlefield into a stage. Back in England, a much more whimsical deception was taking root. In 1917, 2 young cousins, Elsie Wright and Frances Griffiths, took photographs in their garden in Cottingley that seemed to show them playing with fairies. The photos ended up in the hands of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of the hyper-rational Sherlock Holmes. Doyle, a firm believer in spiritualism, was utterly convinced. He published the photos, declaring them proof of the supernatural. The Cottingley fairies became a global phenomenon. It wasn't until the 1980s that the cousins, by then elderly women, confessed. The fairies were cardboard cutouts held in place with hat pins. Even the greatest detective's creator could be fooled by a simple, heartfelt illusion. The allure of lost royalty is a powerful one. After the execution of the Russian royal family in 1918, rumors persisted that the youngest daughter, Anastasia, had survived. This hope gave rise to a parade of imposters. The most famous was Anna Anderson, a woman who appeared in a Berlin asylum in 1920. For decades, she fought a legal battle to be recognized as the Grand Duchess, convincing many former Romanov associates with her intimate knowledge of court life. Her story became the basis for plays and movies. But when DNA testing became possible after her death, the truth was revealed. She was a Polish factory worker with a history of mental illness. The fantasy of a rescued princess was, in the end, just a fantasy. But why settle for pretending to be a princess when you can invent an entire country? In the 1820s, a dashing Scottish soldier named Gregor MacGregor arrived in London with an incredible tale. He was the cacique, or prince, of Poitiers, a lush, resource-rich nation on the coast of Central America. He produced an elaborate guidebook, fake currency, and land grants, selling plots of paradise to eager British investors and settlers. Hundreds of people sold everything they owned and set sail for their new home. When they arrived, they found no bustling capital, no fertile fields, only a mosquito-infested, uninhabited jungle. 2/3 of the settlers died. MacGregor had created a country out of thin air, a Ponzi scheme of nations. The 19th century public had a voracious appetite for the bizarre, and P.T. Barnum was a master at feeding it. His most infamous exhibit was the Fiji mermaid, advertised as a real, preserved mermaid captured near Fiji. Crowds lined up to see the creature. What they saw was a grotesque hybrid, the torso and head of a small monkey sewn onto the tail of a fish. It was a crudely assembled taxidermy nightmare, but presented with Barnum's signature showmanship, it became a must-see oddity. It was a perfect, cynical lesson in spectacle. It doesn't have to be real, it just has to be weird enough to make people pay. Some hoaxes, however, have consequences far more sinister than a few lost shillings. In the early 20th century, a text called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion began to circulate. It purported to be the minutes of a secret meeting of Jewish leaders plotting to achieve global domination. It was a complete fabrication, plagiarized from an obscure French political satire and repackaged as an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory by the Russian secret police. Despite being definitively debunked as a forgery, it became one of the most influential and destructive pieces of hate literature ever created, used by regimes like the Nazis to justify persecution and genocide. The modern age, with its 24-hour news cycle, created new opportunities for scams. In 2009, the world watched, breathless, as a silver saucer-like balloon drifted across the Colorado sky. Inside, news channels reported, was 6-year-old Falcon Heen. Rescue crews scrambled, flights were diverted, and for 2 hours, everyone held their breath. But when the balloon finally landed, it was empty. The boy was later found hiding in his family's attic. His parents, Richard and Mayumi Heen, had orchestrated the entire thing as a publicity stunt to land a reality TV show. The Balloon Boy hoax was a uniquely modern scam, a desperate bid for fame in the age of viral news. Long before TV, however, media was already fueling legends. The myth of the Loch Ness Monster exploded in the 1930s, but it was one iconic photograph from 1934 that cemented Nessie in the public imagination. The surgeon's photograph appeared to show a long-necked creature rising from the water. For 60 years, it was considered the best evidence for the monster's existence. But in 1994, it was exposed as a hoax. The monster was a toy submarine fitted with a sculpted head, staged by a man seeking revenge against a newspaper that had ridiculed him. He had used a respected doctor as a frontman to give the photo credibility, and it worked perfectly. Decades earlier, a newspaper pulled off an even bigger stunt. In 1835, the New York Sun published a 6-part series claiming that a famous astronomer had used a powerful new telescope to discover life on the moon. The articles described in stunning detail vast forests, oceans, and herds of bison-like creatures. Most incredibly, they reported the existence of winged bat-like humanoids who had built great temples. The public was enthralled. The Great Moon Hoax sent the newspaper's circulation soaring, and for weeks it was accepted as fact. It was a brilliant satire on scientific credulity and a stunning demonstration of the power of the press to shape reality. The desire for the impossible has often driven scams, and nothing was more impossible than turning lead into gold. For centuries, kings and nobles poured fortunes into the hands of alchemists who promised to unlock the secret of the philosopher's stone. These alchemists were masters of theatrical fraud, using secret compartments, pre-treated crucibles, and sleight of hand to produce specks of gold during dramatic demonstrations. They would take a king's money, promise miraculous results, and then vanish in the night, leaving behind nothing but empty coffers and shattered dreams. It was a long-running scam that preyed on the ultimate greed, the desire for infinite wealth. Sometimes a forgery can become so revered that it transcends its fraudulent origins. The Shroud of Turin, a linen cloth bearing the faint image of a crucified man, is believed by many to be the burial cloth of Jesus Christ. It is one of the most sacred and intensely studied relics in Christianity. Yet, radiocarbon dating performed in 1988 placed the cloth's origin in the Middle Ages, between 1260 and 1390. While debates still rage, the scientific consensus points to it being a masterful medieval forgery. But for millions of believers, the shroud's power isn't in its authenticity, but in the faith it inspires a hoax that has, for some, become holy. Of all the historical puzzles, few are as baffling as the Voynich manuscript. It's a 240-page book written in an unknown language or code, filled with bizarre illustrations of unidentifiable plants, astrological charts, and naked figures in strange plumbing. Discovered in 1912, it has resisted every attempt at decryption by the world's best cryptographers for over a century. Is it a lost language? An encrypted alchemical text? Or is it the most elaborate, meaningless, and brilliant hoax ever conceived, a book of gibberish created solely to be indecipherable? The fact that we still don't know is a testament to its genius. In 1817, a mysterious and beautiful young woman appeared in an English village, speaking an unintelligible language. She was taken in by a local magistrate, whose wife eventually translated her story. She was Princess Caribou from the island of Javasu in the Indian Ocean, captured by pirates and cast ashore in England. For weeks, she was the darling of high society, enchanting nobles with her exotic customs and strange tongue. But her fame was her undoing. A woman recognized her picture in a newspaper and exposed her as Mary Baker, a cobbler's daughter from Devonshire. She had invented the language, the backstory, and the entire persona, all for a bit of adventure and a good meal. The market for ancient artifacts is a breeding ground for fakes, and few are as audacious as the forgeries of Chinese jade burial suits. These magnificent suits, made of thousands of jade tiles sewn together with gold wire, were used to entomb Han Dynasty royalty. Authentic suits are incredibly rare and priceless. But starting in the 1990s, the market was flooded with stunningly crafted ancient suits. Some were sold for millions to unsuspecting museums and collectors. They were, in fact, modern creations made by master craftsmen who had perfected the art of aging jade, a high-stakes con playing on the world's hunger for lost imperial treasures. If you can't sell fake jade, why not sell fake space rocks? With the public's fascination for space exploration, a black market emerged for lunar meteorites, rocks blasted from the moons, surface that landed on Earth. These are exceptionally rare and valuable. But con artists soon realized that it's hard for a layman to tell a moon rock from a regular one. Scammers began selling ordinary terrestrial rocks, often packaged with official-looking but fake NASA documentation, for thousands of dollars. One of the most famous cases involved a piece of petrified wood sold to the Dutch National Museum as a moon rock, gifted by the Apollo 11 astronauts. Our final scam is in the 1970s. One of the strangest financial hoaxes in modern history took flight literally when a pair of con men convinced investors that trained pigeons could predict the stock market better than Wall Street's cutting-edge computers. They claimed the birds were part of an experimental behavioral program and could peck out buy and sell signals with uncanny accuracy, supposedly outperforming human analysts and early algorithmic models. Shockingly, some investors believed it, pouring money into the scheme at a time when financial uncertainty, technological hype, and the growing fascination with behavioral science made the idea seem just plausible enough. The hoax worked because it blended all the right ingredients: People desperate for an edge, a rising trust in anything labeled scientific, and the seductive promise of beating the market with a secret, exotic method. It remains one of the most bizarre reminders that when money is involved, even pigeons can become financial prophets. If history teaches us anything, it's this: the biggest scams succeed not because they're convincing, but because people want them to be true. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, which hoax shocked you the most?